on. But to get this particular programme off the ground, I've been joined by a lady who's very well known, particularly to the younger people of the parish, and that's the local schoolmistress, Mrs Welch. And indeed this lady has been with us on local radio before as well, when her choir from the school and the local church presented half an hour of Christmas carols. And it was a programme that won much praise around the North Cork area. But tonight Mrs Welch is going to talk to us about the school and a little bit about its history. No? You'll be happy standing, would you?
I don't mind.
Yeah. But you will like yourself?
I think I prefer to stand.
Yeah.
Would you prefer?
Yeah, sit down. I want to use the video one on it anyway. Yeah. I am.
You'll have to come into that now. You don't have to come in on. Pick you up at a distance then. Definitely. Yeah. Was it Joe?
The history of formal education in Castlemagner can be dated back to 1812, 174 years ago. It is recorded that on June the 2nd, Cecilstown School was established. This school was not attached to any church or chapel. Walls were of lime and sand, mortar and stone, and had a roof thatched with reeds. It was erected by Sir William Beecher, and he paid the rent. It had 2 desks, no seats. These desks could accommodate 20 pupils and were used by the writers. The other children provided themselves with temporary seats. Monday was set aside for religious instruction, and parents were at liberty to withhold their children from attending on this day. 5 days were given to common branches of moral and literary education for 10 hours each day. School opened at 8 a.m. and ended at 6 p.m. during spring, summer and autumn. School opened at 9 a.m. and ended at 4 in winter. There were 120 children attending school each week, 80 boys and 40 girls. James Ryan was the teacher in this school of 1812. He would be an ancestor to Paddy Ryan, the retired teacher of Kilbreen. At this point, we must mention that this school was erected by Sir William Beecher for children of his tenants. Castlemagner Parish owes a special debt of gratitude to the Beecher family for all they did for education in the parish. The Beechers were highly educated people, and because of their great respect and love for education, they did all in their power to secure that the children in Cecilstown would receive formal education. Then in 1837, 5 years after the National School Bill was passed, a school of 50 boys and 30 girls was established in Cecilstown under the National Board of Education and aided by Sir William Beecher. Apart from these schools, hedge schools played their part in the history of education in Castlemagner Parish in the early years of 1800. The Mrs Scott taught sewing and a little reading in Cecilstown from 1848 to 1852. Then in 1850, a Michael Ryan, another ancestor of Paddy Ryan's, opened a hedge school in Cecilstown. A John Davis and a Dan McCarthy taught in a hedge school at Castlemagner Cross in 1848. In the year 1848, the National School, which we now call the Old Schoolhouse, was built by Sir Beecher and named Ballyhass National School. This ensured that all the children in the parish would receive national education. We have school records dating back to 1863. Records further back, as far as 1848, must have been destroyed in a fire that broke out at some stage in the school. Scorched pages tell the tale, apart from being told this fact by the late Jack Welch. This fire must have happened in the girls' school, as there are few records available of the girls' school. Now in 1848 there were two separate schools, boys downstairs with a headmaster and an assistant, girls upstairs with a headmistress and an assistant. There were also monitors. Research on education in Ballyhass School from 1848 up to 1917 reveals some interesting facts. A wide variety of subjects were taught. Mathematics had 4 branches. Writing consisted of writing on slates and on paper. English had poetry, grammar, reading, spelling, music, drawing, physical and applied science, geography, trigonometry, and agriculture. Agriculture had many headings: farm offices, livestock, implements and machines, manures, farm accounts. It looks as if they ran a small farm. But the remarks passed by inspectors were usually uncomplimentary. For example, instruction on agriculture is very indifferently taught, and this was recorded several times. Children in 4th class, 5th and 6th classes were inspected in agriculture each year, and children spent 2 years in 5th class and 2 years in 6th class. Pupils came to Ballyhass School from Sally's Cross, Kippock, Ballyrushen, and all the townlands around, and it is interesting to see all these townlands in print over 150 years ago. These reports show a special column for sacred poetry and scripture lessons, but no marks were ever entered. Records were kept of results of each child's annual examination in every subject. Attendance during these years was not very good. One reads attendances of 57 days in a year, 10 days in a year, and the highest attendance in the year 1883 was 196 days by a boy aged 6 from Cecilstown. Realizing that children walked to school and long distances at that, it is no wonder the attendance was so bad. The occupation of the fathers of those attending school varied. One reads a carpenter, gardener, smith, servant, coachman, labourer, publican, mason, very few farmers. And we know why. The land belonged to the gentry, only the privileged few owned land. On leaving school, it is recorded that the children either remained at home, left the area, or emigrated. The children did not leave school at 12 years. They were often 15 years plus. During these years, children paid a school fee, and a record was kept annually of each child's contribution. Some paid nothing, and the amount varied from 14 shillings to nothing. In 1881, Edward Ryan taught in Ballyhass. He was Paddy Ryan's grandfather. His wife was O'Flynn from Arda Prior and was principal in Liscarroll School the same time as her husband Edward was principal in Ballyhass. Billy Alex's brother was appointed and paid by the Beechers to drive Mrs. Ryan to Liscarroll daily. That was his sole occupation. In 1891, a Mr. Patrick Murphy was headmaster and continued as headmaster for many years afterwards. In the year 1893, the inspector's report was not complimentary towards Mr. Patrick Murphy and demanded attention be paid to reading and grammar. This report was sent to Sir Beecher, who was patron and manager of the school. He in turn sent the report to Mr. Patrick Murphy with this note: Mr. Murphy, please note above observation of Mr. Daly the inspector and effect some improvement in the subject of reading and grammar before the inspector's next visit. Signed, Manager W. Beecher, the 18th of July, 1998. Thank God managers are different today. In 1904, Mr. Tim Hanlon became headmaster and gave 45 years service to the parish of Castlemagner, a wonderful record of service in a school and a parish. There are past pupils of his still living in the parish. His memory lives on. In 1917, a very interesting letter was received by Sir Beecher from the Office of Education, calling his attention to the fact that rural science and horticulture was not a subject of instruction, even though the teacher, Mr. Tim Hanlon, was fully qualified to teach. The necessary equipment would be provided if there were sufficient children available for instruction. The secretaries of the Department of Education signed the letter in the following manner. We have the honour to be, sir, your obedient servants, W.J. Dilworth and A. Bonaparte, secretaries. Now I shall repeat that. We have the honour to be, sir, your obedient servants. I am certain that Father Foley or Father Buckley were never addressed by the Department of Education in such respectful terms. In 1949, Jack Welch of loving memory became headmaster. He had been a pupil of Tim Hanlon's. Jack's devotion to the school and his spirit will live on as long as Castlemagner remains on this earth. His contribution to education in Castlemagner can never be weighed or assessed by us. Arieste Gorevanen. In 1956, Ballyhass School became co-educational. The boys and the girls' school were amalgamated. In 1964, the new school was built. Our modern school, with all its conveniences, is so different from the school of 1812, with its roof of reeds, straw on the floor. But the important thing is that this generation of Castlemagner children are being given the best education possible. And those of us invested with this huge responsibility feel honoured and privileged that we are a strong, vital link in that unbroken chain that links 1812 with 1986.
Listening there to the history of education in Castlemagner, it strikes me, Mrs Welch, that if the records are preserved, the records of a school in the parish, you're literally preserving the whole history of the parish, are you?
Oh, yes.
Are records, generally speaking, in national schools fairly well preserved?
Oh, yes, because from the time that they went under the department, they had to keep the records. But then they may not have been transferred to new schools.
Now, I know a number of parish priests who complain that Americans are coming home and ask, was my grandfather baptized in this church in such and such a time? Do you get people coming to the school asking?
I had just one person, a David Cronin, and we found his name, and the information that we found was that he came from the orphanage in Fermoy. And then we talked about all that, and he told me that at that time, that would be around 1920, people were paid £1 a month for rearing orphans. And this shows us how poor people were if they were willing to rear a child for £1.
£1 a month?
£1 a month. And then once a year, they were taken to Kanturk and clothed from head to toe.
Yes, the other thing I must ask you, of course, you were talking about attendances there in the past. Attendances today are a bit better, are they?
Oh, they're excellent.
And good thing you said there was at the late 40s, the early 50s it became co-educational.
Yes.
Are you a believer in co-education?
Oh, I am, sure.
And it doesn't cause any great problems?
No, not really.
Mrs Welch, thank you very much indeed.